For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's Wednesday practice of Colorado Week. Now, this was the first time we talked to the defensive staff since they've been able to do a full film review of the loss to Oregon State. And Shotgun, it didn't sound like a fun experience for those coaches.
No, Todd Orlando said he's watched the film, numerous times. He said, that's what you expect. If you take pride in your job, that's what you're going to do. You're going to go back and look at all the mistakes and see what you have to do to correct it. And that's what they've been doing this week. He said the practices have been really good. He said the players have responded well. But he said it's on the coaching staff to do a better job. He took a lot of accountability and said, there were times when they had assignment busts, and he blamed himself for that and said maybe we gave the players a little bit too much at times. So they got to find that balance. So he took a lot of accountability and said that it was on him. There were some plays that should have been made as well. They got tackled a little bit better, but Todd Orlando is really taking this one to heart, it felt like, and I think we'll see how they can respond to this, both the coaching staff and the players, this upcoming week against Colorado.
A phrase we kept hearing in practice in the interviews was, "This is not us. We can't wait to get back out on the field." Yeah. What did you hear on that front?
Yeah, definitely. They're ready to put it behind them, and that's the thing is, they wish they had a game sooner, just so they can get back on the field and try to prove themselves in a much better light. They struggled in that game. They struggled with the outside runs. Is something Todd Orlando talked about. He said, they missed some tackles, but it was the jet sweeps and stuff that really got them, that he was really upset with. And he said they're going to see that from Colorado. They'll see that from Utah. He said these teams are going to throw that in there in the mix. So he didn't want to give away how they're kind of attacking that, but he said that's something they're definitely working on this week as well. Colorado is a team that likes to get out in space and use their running backs in one-on-one matchups, try to get them in space. And they'll have to try to contain them. Obviously, USC has struggled up the middle a little bit this season, so we'll see how they can, if they can slow things down on those jet sweeps and force them between the tackles, if they can make the plays in between the tackles as well.
Well, speaking up the middle, you got to ask Todd Orlando about the inside linebackers and their performance so far this year. What do you have to say? Yeah,
Todd Orlando said that, and that's his position group. Yeah. He said, I don't want them to be A-gap backers. I don't want them to just be A-gap to A-gap. He wants them to be able to get out and, be able to run with players. He wants them, when they throw the ball out in space, he wants them to get out there and help out the safeties. He doesn't want to be a one-on-one matchup with a safety out there trying to make a tackle. He wants guys to get out there. And we've seen a little bit more of Kailana Makala, the former, recruited as a cornerback, but then, played safety at USC his first couple years, was converted to linebacker this year. We've seen him a little bit more in practice. Maybe that's a guy that could get some opportunities. I asked Todd Orlando, and he said, yeah, that's the skill set maybe that they'll see going forward if they're looking for that type of player in their linebackers. So we'll see where they go with it, but I think you'll definitely see some changes on the defensive side, not necessarily just personnel, but some adjustments are going to be made because they tried a bunch of stuff in that Oregon State game. It didn't work, so I think they've been making some adjustments this week to try to counterbalance it.
How do you make adjustments when a team kind of exposes you mid-season like that?
I mean, it's tough, but I think you're going to see some personnel changes, maybe some adjustments to where guys are lining up. We've seen some of the second-team guys getting first-team reps this week. Are those guys, are they going to get the start this week, or are you just pushing those first-teamers and saying, look, your job is on the line if you don't start practicing a little bit better? And that's one of the things that Vic Soto's talked about ad nauseum, and Dante Williams when he was his position coach, that no spot's safe. You got to earn it in practice, and that's what we're seeing. We'll see if some of those second-team guys, because the first-team guys didn't get it done last week, so now the second-team guys get a chance to step in. Can they make some plays?
Yeah, we specifically had questions about Drake Jackson and Corey Foreman, and Vic Soto basically said he needs to see consistency from them and said that Corey Foreman is on the younger side, and sometimes that shows.
Yeah, he said, he was asked how much Corey Foreman will be able to play this week, and he said that's up to him. He said he's got another practice this week on Thursday to prove himself and prove that he needs the playing time, but that's his mentality, is that you got to prove it during the week. You got to prove that you deserve to be on the field on Saturdays. So, and he said both those guys, both Drake Jackson and Corey Foreman, are this close on a lot of sacks, but they're not getting there. So what can they do? What's that extra little thing that they can be doing? And that's where the technique comes in. That's where your work during the week to give you that tenth of a second to get to the quarterback before you can get rid of the ball. So that's what they're looking for from those two pass rush options. Todd Orlando said, they've got to be cautious with Drake Jackson with the bruises and bumps that he's taken, and that's part of the reason why he didn't play much in the second half. But we'll see what those guys can prove this week. Colorado is not a team that's going to throw the ball a ton. Yep. Their passing attack is not very good right now, so it's going to be about stopping the run first. But when they do, if they can back them up, if you can get a couple stops, hold them to a yard or two on first and second down and force them into passing situations, can you then get to the quarterback? That'll be important for them this week to get off the field.
Defensive line depth has always been a concern for USC coming into the season, and we mentioned how we saw Ishmael get back in pads and do some individual reps this week in practice. We both talked to him. He kind of gave us a status update, but not really.
Yeah, he said he hopes to be back this year. That was the question that was asked of him, will you be back at all? And, he was asked if he was going to be back this week, and he was like, I don't really know that one right now. He hasn't done any team stuff yet, so that's not going to be the case. But he is progressing. Getting back out there is progressing for him. We saw him do some individual stuff yesterday. We saw him do some stuff with the linemen today, with the offensive linemen, just kind of walk through stuff. But making strides. I asked him about, what's his role as far as with some of those younger guys, being a guy that has some college experience. He said, yeah, I try to get some pointers and stuff. And he mentioned, that on Saturday I asked him what he saw, and he said, we got to get a better pad level and we got to get a little bit more extension. So we'll see if he can help coach up some of those guys. Now he's back on the field. You get a little bit more respect for guys, and that you listen to them a little bit more when you see them practicing as well. So we'll see when he can come back. USC is super thin at the nose tackle position. Obviously, with the losses they've sustained from the Brandon Keely injury, Jay Toya's transfer, we've seen some offensive linemen, on scout team. We saw Gino Quinones there last week. We saw Toa Lobandan today, the grad assistant, putting on the pads. It was in shorts, not full pads, but putting on the pads and lining up at nose tackle just to give them an extra body, just because they're so thin at that position that your scout team's not even able to get a full look. So we'll see what they can do there and how they're trying to address it, because Vic Soto said, hey, it's not the NFL. It's not free agency. You can't just go grab somebody. But if they can find a Vince Wilfork, that'd be really nice if they can find one of those to come in free agency. So we'll see what they can do with the nose tackle position. That's an area of concern, especially with the teams they're going to face going forward. Colorado wants to run downhill. Utah wants to run downhill. And then after the bye week, Notre Dame definitely wants to run downhill against them. So after seeing this Oregon State game, you're going to have to stop the runs, and the runs, right at attacking you directly. So we'll see how they can address it this week, if they try to use some different bodies or if they try to attack in a different way with the linebackers, with the safeties. How are you attacking that middle of the defense to keep, offenses from being able to push back that nose tackle and then getting to the second level with those combo blocks? That's what Oregon State was able to do really well on Saturday, and that's something they'll have to address going forward.
As far as injury updates go, we had questions about Drake London after practice on Tuesday because he looked like he banged himself up a little bit, but he did come out in practice doing Drake London things, still pushing through, but looked a little gimpy. But we didn't see Chris Thompson Jr. or Isaac Taylor Stewart participate in our 15-minute window that we were able to see, but they did dress out. But we did see more Josh Jackson in that first-team cornerback reel. Yeah,
Josh Jackson was getting some more reps, and he's a guy that's rotated in there. Jaden Williams will be available as well if Isaac Taylor Stewart is not available to go. Chris Thompson is a guy that you would like to have available because he's a big-bodied safety, a guy you can put in the box and you can use on some of those bigger packages that you have that they've done earlier this season. So getting him back would be nice. But Drake London looks, as healthy as he's been, which, is still a little banged up. Michael Trigg as well, a little bit gimpy on some things, but he's practicing as well. So those two guys, those offensive playmakers, appear to be there, but the defense maybe a little bit light in a couple spots. We'll see where they are on Saturday.
Speaking of Saturday, how do you think this one's going to go, Chuck? And I know Vic Soto said this is probably the most mobile quarterback they'll see so far this season. What's your prediction?
They've got to do a better job of containing the quarterback. That was one of the issues that they had where they're blitzing on one side and the quarterback's able to get on the other side. So how do they address that? Are you going to use a spy? Are you going to use, different ways that you're going to go about it? You're going to play some more zone coverages. But the biggest thing will be getting them in those third and long situations to try to force that quarterback to step back and pass first. But, I think USC, we've wondered how they'll do against running quarterbacks. Running quarterbacks last year got some yardage early in the season, and then USC was kind of shut that down under Clancy Pendergast. That was always an issue. So that's something that's definitely a concern. But can you just stop the run initially? Don't worry about the quarterback runs. Can you stop the running back runs? That's going to be the big thing after what Oregon State did. I think that USC has to start there, and if they can force if they can force Colorado into passing, that's where the strength is going to lie, because then you can put extra DBs out there potentially, and USC, has a lot of depth in those areas.
Alrighty, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
I think it's going to be an interesting trip. Again, you go on the road, short, kind of a short week because you're traveling, and then you play early in the morning. How do they respond? We talked about it yesterday. Does the offense come out ready to go from the get-go? Similar with the defense. At Washington State, both sides struggled a little bit early and then finally got things going. I think the defense, I thought last week that they would be ready to prove themselves in front of the home crowd after struggling against Stanford. I think they'll be ready this week, and the amount of disgust I think that the defensive coaches have, I think they're going to be all over those guys throughout the rest of the week too, and I think they're going to give a much better effort. We'll see though on Saturday. If they don't stop the run, they can't get some pressure and get behind the line of scrimmage, could be a long day for USC once again.
Yeah. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's Wednesday practice of Colorado Week. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.